The final item of business today is the members' business debate on motion number 5318 in the name of Alex-Johnstone on safer social networking for children. This debate will be concluded without any questions being put, and I would ask those members who wish to speak in the debate to press the request to speak buttons now. And I call on Alex-Johnstone to open the debate. 7 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Deputy Presiding Officer. Many of us who grew up before the advent of the Internet view the World Wide Web as a tool that we can use to communicate or do research. In our leisure time, it's something we might use to download a TV programme that we've missed or a film we'd like to see, or perhaps buy something that isn't readily available on the high street. But for young people, it's more than that. It's a virtual place. It's a space that they can spend time in and meet up with friends in the same way that they can when they meet up in person. Research shows that children and young people do not differentiate a great deal between friendships online and friendships in person. But just as young people can be bullied in person, they can be equally vulnerable to bullying or other kinds of sinister behaviour online. In some respects, online bullying is worse. Previously, when a child came home from school and the front door closed behind them, they were safe from their tormentors. But now bullying can continue in the form of cyberbullying, which Scotland's anti-bullying service, Respect Me, tells us was emerging as far back as 2007. Respect Me also found that children and young people are online almost every day, with research from Ofcom showing that 91% of children aged between 5 and 15 live in a household with internet access, and with PC or laptop internet use at home running at 65% for 5 to 7-year-olds. Ofcom's research also showed that parents have relatively low levels of concern about different aspects of their child's internet use, with fewer than one-third saying that they are very or fairly concerned about their child giving personal details to inappropriate people, with 27% directly concerned about cyberbullying. And yet the research from Respect Me showed that 16% of children or young people questioned said they have been cyberbullied, and 25% worry about it. But awareness of this important issue, which can ultimately have tragic consequences, as we know, is growing. Awareness campaigns and media coverage are showing that there is no room for complacency. More must be done to ensure that parents who want to know where their children are and who they meet when they go out also want to know these same things about their children when they're online. Recently, I was delighted to meet Mr. Jamie Tosh from Arbroath, whose own daughter had been a victim of cyberbullying. And he decided that it was imperative that a safe online environment be provided for children who are too young to join other social networking sites, but feel that the need to do so in order to communicate with their peers. Mr. Tosh, who joins us in the public gallery today to listen to this debate, has invested a lot of his own time and money in such a site called Kabuku, and I commend him for his hard work. Kabuku is a social networking site aimed solely at children from the age of 6 years and upwards. It's innovative in the way it requires parental monitoring of their child's activity at least every 2 weeks. Crucially, it also verifies the identity of the adult, providing a strong disincentive to adults who would attempt to log in for inappropriate reasons. Members will have the opportunity to gain first-hand experience and an explanation of how the site works tomorrow, when Mr. Tosh will be in Parliament in the middle of the day, demonstrating it for any members of staff who wish to observe it. I believe that it is innovations such as this that will ultimately play a substantial role in keeping our children and young people safe online. But we must all work together to help deliver the kind of positive experiences that we want our young people to have. Of course, politicians have a role to play in that. Businesses too can and do contribute. But the internet is an exceptionally difficult place to police, and it's vital that we encourage parents and responsible adults to engage positively with children and young people in order to keep them safe in the virtual world of the internet, which is so very important to them. Deputy Presiding Officer, when we discuss issues in this chamber, it's quite common for us to bring forward questions for which we seek answers, or to air problems which we are worried there may never be an answer to. Tonight and tomorrow, we have the opportunity to take a problem and actually look at a possible answer. Deputy Presiding Officer, I beg support for the motion in my name.
Thank you. This debate is quite popular, so speeches of 4 minutes, please. Graham Day, to be followed by Anne McTaggart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. We're told that 55% of children and young people access the internet every day, and 53% are online for up to 2 hours daily. So creating a safe environment in which they can do this, free from the risk of bullying or being targeted by inappropriate adults, is hugely important. Bullying of any kind can be a devastating experience for a child. Anyone who has had or worked with kids knows just how cruel, often without entirely realising the pain their words or actions cause, they can be to one another. For 3 years, whilst my son was completing his primary school education, I coached football as a parent helper, and I was taken aback by how nasty otherwise decent children could be to each other on occasion. And 7 years on, with the internet having exploded in the intervening period, we've seen the emergence of cyberbullying. In a recent Parent Line survey, almost 19% of parents revealed their child had suffered some form of cyberbullying. In a Children First survey, 79% of respondents considered cyberbullying to be an issue, with 29% revealing their kids had fallen victim to it. And in a survey of 2,500 young people carried out by Beat Bullying, 50% of respondents said they'd been cyberbullied, and 11% actually admitted to being a cyber bully. So there's undoubtedly an online bullying issue to be addressed, and sadly we have to face up to the fact there's also a threat to youngsters posed by some unsavoury older people. The scale of that may be hard to quantify, but in some respects the scale is irrelevant. If one child is liable to be under threat from such advances, then we have a responsibility to try and stop that from happening. And as I understand it, those facilitating standard social networking sites aren't altogether exercising the level of responsibility we might expect they would. Facebook, which is reckoned to be visited by 68% of young internet users, is an example of a social networking site that is extremely easy to join. It doesn't verify the date of birth provided, so a youngster can claim to be in their late teens and gain full access to Facebook and its services. And as users can send messages anonymously, the problem with trolling is very much there. Personally, I have only a very basic understanding of the services offered by Facebook, by social networking, but a friend who's in their mid-20s and possessing of a decent grasp of Facebook tells me that even an individual who's well versed in this service can be caught out when it comes to managing privacy arrangements. A short time ago, Facebook initiated changes to their privacy rules, which required every user to go to their settings and reset all the restrictions they had before. My friend was unaware of this requirement and assumed that their photos, posts, interactions and information remained accessible to friends only. It turned out several profile sections, including all photos, were visible for anyone to see. I think this highlights just how easy it is to access a stranger's profile or for strangers to find out personal information about you. Bad enough for adults, but for kids. Therefore, the advent of Kabuki, highlighted in this motion, is extremely welcome. As parents, we've all been subjected to the pleading of our children, desperate to be the same as their pals. We've all had to endure the pressure which comes from that well-worn phrase, everyone else gets to, so why can't I? And a number of parents do cave in when it comes to social working and allow their kids to lie about their age in order to sign up, believing that if they befriend them on the site and occasionally check up on what they're doing, it will be fine. But it may not be. That's why a system designed with kids and their safety in mind is to be welcomed. And looking at the safeguards Kabuki offers, surely the question isn't so much why would you sign your children up to it or something similar, but why wouldn't you? The fact it allows children in the 6 to 13 age bracket to access social networking, but only with parental controls in place, including monitoring friend requests and private messages makes it a no-brainer for me. And I say that not because Jamie Tosh, the creator of Kabuku, is a constituent of mine, but because ensuring youngsters are able to participate in social network in a protected environment is something we would all of us support. So in conclusion, Presiding Officer, can I thank Alex-Johnstone for bringing this important matter to the Chamber for debate and add my support to the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now call Anne McTaggart. Officer, I welcome the opportunity to speak in tonight's members' debate on safer social networking for children and thank Alex-Johnstone for securing this time to consider such a serious issue of our time. I was shocked to discover that the statistics of young people falling victim to cyberbullies in recent years is not only alarmingly high, but is also on the increase. This form of bullying can have a devastating effect on the well-being of a child, leading to depression, anxiety, and in some extreme cases, I have been troubled to hear that some young people have taken their own lives. As a mother of 3 children, I can identify with parents and carers in their concern that their children could be at risk of being targeted through emails, texts, or social networking websites. I think it is crucial that we help to raise awareness of cyberbullying to those that look after children so they can be aware of potential signs of bullying via text or the internet. Like many other colleagues that have already spoken, I commend the work of the organisation Respects Me for their most recent anti-cyberbullying campaign, offering advice on how to handle a cyberbully. I welcome the fact that the Scottish Government is represented on the UK Council for Child Internet Safety, where cyberbullying is addressed in discussions along with other aspects of internet safety. However, in a survey of over 2,400 young people, Beat Bullying found that 50% of those questioned said they had been cyberbullied, and worryingly, 29% told no one about being cyberbullied. Parents and carers must look closely at what online activity their children are engaging with. Children First have produced an excellent document available on their website of 12 top tips. See, hear, speak now and act. To protect children, which is definitely worth the reading. Big Ambition Scotland states that if a teenager or young person is perpetrating the cyberbullying, it is common for them to lose their ISP or IM account for violation or misuse of the service. And I think we need to look at the importance of this. I would also like to highlight the efforts of Glasgow City Council on their anti-bullying policy, which now requires all discriminatory behaviours to be recorded and reported within the educational establishments. I think recognising that online bullying can be just as harmful as bullying in the playground is a step towards dealing with the issue and helping to prevent it. It's a joy to hear of the young people leading the way in combating cyberbullying. Gallow Hill Primary School in Renfrewshire set up a social enterprise entitled Support Me through the Social Enterprise in Schools programme. The anti-cybernet bullying business has been so successful it has won awards for its workshops. This is how I believe this issue has to be tackled, by adults and children alike, working together. We need to encourage and give credit to all campaigns that are attempting to make the internet a safer place for our children. In raising awareness, we try to limit the detrimental effect it has on our young people in our communities. Thank you. Thank you. Call Mark MacDonald to be followed by Rhoda Grant.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. The internet is a fantastic resource. It has opened up opportunities for communication and knowledge sharing that I think most people would never have dreamed were possible. Those of us who have relations in other countries find it much easier to communicate with them, to share what's going on in our lives. Indeed, my family, my father works in Africa quite often, and I have family in Canada, and I've been able to keep them up to date with the progress of my children via the means of social networking. It has been fantastic for that. But we should also accept that it is a place of great dangers. The anonymity that it offers to users makes it a place where bullies can operate with much greater impunity than they can do in a physical environment. And that's why I think that resources such as Kabuku are extremely welcome and fantastic resource. I think that when we look at the figures around aggressive and unpleasant behaviour online, when we look at the worries that parents have, and my children are too young to be using social media, but one day they will probably wish to do so. They will wish to explore the internet. Certainly, my son has developed something of an expertise with a touchscreen computer at his nursery, so it's probably not going to be too long before he's trying to use computers to access the internet and all of the opportunities that it will offer him. But there are also concerns out there, and that's why we require safe social networking and safe internet environments for our children, because we have to accept that young children are going to want to use online resources, and for all that we can put in place firewall protection, parental controls, there are only so many restrictions that we can put in place as parents. And that's why I think that the parent-child element of Kabuku is something which I think sets it apart from other social networking. The fact that the parent also has to be involved in the registration process differentiates it from other social media, and I think is extremely welcome, because it provides that assurance to parents that their children are accessing something which is more secure, more safe for them, and also allows the children to know that it is safe to use as well, and hopefully they will be more willing to consider it than perhaps other social networking sites. At the same time, however, and I look forward to the opportunity that is presented tomorrow, and I hope to find the time to be able to come and have a look at Kabuku in action. At the same time, we shouldn't also allow other social networking forums and sites off the hook. And I think that, I think it would be stretching it to assume that Mr. Zuckerberg is sitting in Facebook headquarters right now watching a live stream of this debate. But he and his company and other social networking sites, be that Bebo, be it MSN, be it BlackBerry Messenger, they have to up their game. They have to start taking more of a responsibility for the fact that they allow young children to access their sites without the proper verifications. Because I have seen profiles, be they of friends' children or of family members who are clearly too young to have their own profile according to the rules of these sites, but nonetheless have one. And I don't think that enough is being done by these companies to ensure that they are protecting these young people from some of the difficulties and some of the dangers that lie in accessing social media sites at a very young age. So, as well as welcoming the introduction of Kabuku and congratulating Mr. Tosh on his fine efforts, this chamber should also be sending a message to these other social network organisations that they have much to do to ensure the safety of not just Scotland's children, but children across the world. And I hope that in some way, somehow, that message might reach them at some point.
Thank you. Call Rhoda Grant to be followed by Dennis Robertson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I too congratulate Alex-Johnstone for securing this debate? Safer social networking for children is a serious issue, and it can be difficult for adults to easily spot abuse and bullying, and that can have devastating effects on children and young people. As the numbers of young people going online grows and the age of the users gets younger, it's essential that both social networking sites, parents, guardians and school teachers all play their part in ensuring our young people are safe online. The benefits of social networking can be positive, providing users with the ability to stay in touch with friends and family if they live or work in different parts of the country or the world. Young people feel connected to friends across neighbourhoods, towns, cities and countries, and this can be very useful to young people when they live in rural areas, like many in the Highlands and Islands do. Social networking can reach out to young people who need help and advice. It means that many groups and organisations can find it easier to connect with young people in a format that they enjoy and contact their friends by. Many youth advice groups and charities now use social networking as a means to promote their work and reach out to young people. In the Highlands and Islands, essential charities such as Ross-shire Women's Aid, which provides services to children and young people experiencing domestic abuse, use social networking to share information on how to get help and advice. And this highlights the potential for social networking to positively benefit young people. The internet is notoriously hard to police, and I would like to join Alex Johnston and other speakers in applauding Jamie Tosh for developing Kabuku as a safe place online for young people. Unfortunately, popular sites such as Facebook and Twitter are often not safe places for children, be that due to the risk of predatory behaviour from others, the content or images or videos that are shared online. And sadly, as Children First have highlighted in their statistics, that around 50% of young people have suffered from cyberbullying. I agree with Mark MacDonald that the other sites really have to up their game. Sites such as Kabuku, designed with young people in mind and factoring in an element of parental supervision and guidance, means that young people can be safer online. With figures suggesting that 1 in 5 are victims of aggressive or unpleasant behaviour online, makes sites like this attractive to parents. I'm also pleased to see that a donation from the user fee for the site is being made to the Cash for Kids charity. I acknowledge that not every parent or young person will make the switch over to a child-friendly website. I also endorse the recommendations made by Children First and agree that it's in everybody's interests, everybody's responsibility to protect children. And I would call on social networks themselves to do more to ensure that young people are safe online. And kind of a slightly separate but relevant aspect of keeping children safe online is keeping them safe from exploitation. And the Child Exploitation and Online Protection Centre brings together an extensive range of experts to ensure young people are kept safe online. They provide online reporting mechanisms alongside education videos, information tailored to specific age groups, as well as parents and those working alongside children to offer help and advice. I would encourage the leading social networking sites to have CEOP links in place on their websites. This means that if a young person feels vulnerable online, they can immediately flag this up. They then receive advice and information or a direct report which staff at CEOP can follow up in pursuit of keeping young people safe online. Let me close by praising Respect Me, Scotland's anti-bullying service that also plays a significant role in supporting young people in standing up to cyberbullying. We can all play a part in keeping children safe online and ensure that they don't miss out by speaking out and increasing awareness of cyberbullying at home to parents, in the class to teachers, and indeed any place where a young person may be online.
Thank you very much. I now call Dennis Robertson to be followed by Kezia Dugdale.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. Firstly, can I congratulate Alex Johnston for bringing this very important debate to the Chamber. But my thanks and gratitude goes to Mr Tosh. Mr Tosh has taken the bull by the horns, Presiding Officer, in some respects, something that other networks should have done many, many, many years ago. Bullying takes many forms and can be disguised in many ways. I'm certainly aware of the bullying that takes place within the internet field. And it's not all bad, Presiding Officer. The internet is there for a positive reason. Internet opens up a new world, and especially for people with disabilities. It gives them freedom and access to a world that sometimes they cannot experience outside. But, Presiding Officer, I'm very much aware of the bullying that takes place. The bullying and the encouraging towards self-harm. It will come as no surprise to this Chamber, Presiding Officer, that I'm going to focus on the eating disorders and the bullying that takes place therein. There's pro-anorexic sites, Presiding Officer, at least 500 of them. And exposure to these pro-anorexic sites encourage people to self-harm. They encourage people, probably virtually, to kill themselves. That's what they do, Presiding Officer. That's what they do. That's the harm that can be caused through these sites. They're there and they should be policed. For far too long, we've had a passive interest. Presiding officer, children as young, and it's 1 in 5 of 6 to 11-year-olds are exposed to these sites. These sites which encourage them to create behaviour which can cause self-harm and bullying. Presiding officer, my daughter last week saw a situation, a photograph of a young girl who was presenting her profile on the Facebook. And the comments flooded in, presiding officer. Comments about, give her a good meal, do this, do that. They were offensive, they were disgusting, and they should have been taken off the net. Far too long, presiding officer, we've been passive. Facebook and other internet sites, such as the social networks, should police themselves, should have the authority to remove such disgusting and terrible sites from the internet. Why are we passive? I have no idea, presiding officer. Why don't we police it? I have no idea, presiding officer. We need to take action. I'm not sure what the Scottish Government can do, but this Parliament needs to send a clear message to all the social network sites. Get your act together. Stop encouraging our children to bully. Stop letting our children be harmed with social networks. Use it in a positive way. Use it to interact with family and friends across the world, but do not use it to bully. Thank you, presiding officer.
Thank you. Kezia Dugdale to be followed by Malcolm Chisholm.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And like colleagues, can I start by congratulating Alex-Johnstone on securing this debate and congratulating Jamie Tosh on the work he's done in the North East of Scotland. I've taken an interest in this topic as an avid user of social media myself, and to try and understand the size of the challenge, I did some of my own research in Edinburgh, I think around about this time last year, and I went to visit Craigmount High School in the west of Edinburgh and met with a classroom of S1 pupils. Every single one of those S1 pupils had a 3G phone in their pocket. The majority of them had their own laptop, and 40% of them had their own iPad. That's at 12 years old. All of them had Facebook profiles, despite the fact that the age restriction on Facebook was 15 years old, and many of them had had those Facebook profiles since they were 10 years old. Craigmount High School has an excellent IT department. They really are at the cutting edge of integrating technology into the educational experience. They use mobile smartphones in the classroom. They use it, they integrate it into homework programmes, and that reminds us all of the educational value that technology has, and we shouldn't lose sight of that. The school is about to Wi-Fi enable its whole campus, and the educational possibilities that bring are huge. And when I spoke to the school about this, they said, don't worry, we can't access Facebook through the Edinburgh City Council IT system, so you don't have to worry about kids being able to get on Facebook on the school campus. But the blunt reality is that is irrelevant when every kid in the class has their own 3G phone in their pocket. They are not safe from council bullying policies. The danger is far, far greater than that. I don't know about you, Presiding Officer, but I'm not sure how many of my own Facebook friends I could count on in a crisis. And I'm not sure how many of my own Twitter followers actually agree with my views. As Alex-Johnstone has said, the definition of friendships and relationships are markedly distorted online. We need to do more to support children and young people to cope with their own lives and growing pains which are increasingly catalogued online. Spots, haircuts, fashion faux pas, likes, dislikes, academic results, who your parents are, what your parents do, as well demonstrated by Dennis Robertson just seconds ago, body image, what you look like. Much of our debate, our societal debate about children's online safety is focused on the warning signs around predatory relationships, about things like grooming, but far less public attention, in my view, is paid to online peer-led bullying. Many parents have safeguarded their family computers and had the talk with their kids about online strangers, only to let their kids go online and suffer at the hands of their classmates and their acquaintances, silently thinking they're safe. Such bullying can be blatant and playground-like, but it can also be subversive and darkly psychological. Malice can spread like wildfire through a young person's cyber world in minutes and cause lifetimes' worth of damage to their self-esteem and their feelings of self-worth. If you think I'm exaggerating, take a second look at the website www.littlegossip.com, a site dedicated to actively encouraging young people to leave anonymous comments about their classmates and their teachers on a school-by-school basis. It's a truly frightening experience. If the presiding officer will let me take the time back, sure.
Mark MacDonald.
Yeah, it's just a brief intervention to say that, as well as that, I'm sure the member will be aware of there are existence of groups on things like Facebook and Bebo, which are devoted entirely to criticising and bullying individuals, and these happen quite frequently as well.
Kezia Dugdale.
Absolutely, and like the member, I would completely condemn them and think we need a strategy to quite take that on and not just rely on people to report it, because it doesn't always happen. And a word about the bullies as well, presiding officer, because we can't forget them and why they find themselves in a position where they have to bully other young people. I'm aware of 2 kids in Craigmillar at the moment who've been excluded from school because they were involved in cyberbullying. We all know what happens to the educational and indeed the life chances of young people who are excluded from school. We need to keep sight on their hopes and ambitions for the future. A word about some good work, presiding officer. There's a woman called Katrina Lang who I believe is the only e-safety schools officer in Scotland. She's currently employed by Perth and Kinross Council. She's developed a peer-led model about giving kids the capacity to support each other when they're being bullied online, and I'm pleased to welcome her to the Children and Young People Cross-Party Group next Thursday, where we're actually focusing a whole meeting on cyberbullying, and I would encourage other members to attend that. Just finally, presiding officer, I'm afraid just one word of criticism. I raised the issue of cyberbullying in the Chamber back on the 10th of May with Kenny McCaskill. I did it around the concept of how crimes around cyberbullying were reported. He was very helpful, and in that I asked whether he would be willing to meet me. He said it would be more appropriate for me to meet with one of the education ministers. I approached Aileen Campbell informally on the 16th of May, and she said if I wrote to her, she would agree to a meeting. I did that, and on the 22nd of June, I got a letter back from Alistair Allen saying there was no reason to meet with me to discuss the problems with cyberbullying. I felt I had a lot to offer this debate. I felt I had a lot of first-hand information. I was really disappointed with that. So if I can just give one message to the Minister today, I hope that if he's not been willing to listen in the past, he might be willing to act today.
Thank you. Malcolm Chisholm.
Presiding officer, I would also like to congratulate Alex-Johnstone on bringing forward this very important debate, and also, of course, pay tribute to Jamie Tosh, and I've certainly looked forward to observing more closely the particular social networking experience that he has made sure his children have. Clearly, the internet in general and social networking in particular are not intrinsically bad, but like anything else, they're potentially a force for good and potentially a force for evil. We can't uninvent them, and they're not intrinsically bad, but I think the problem basically resides in the wider culture, and that is what we must fundamentally address. And most of my speech, therefore, I would like to devote to how we can educate young people and challenge some of their attitudes. But clearly parental supervision is also very important, and Jamie Tosh clearly takes that view, and I commend him for that. And I would also refer members to a really good article by Colette Douglas-Hume in the Herald today, which also says that in current circumstances, parental supervision will be necessary. Clearly, we want more fundamental changes in the culture, but until those have happened, we mustn't hesitate to have that kind of parental supervision. And certainly, no, I don't particularly speak as a parent, since my children are all growing up, but once you've worried about your children and a few years have passed, you start worrying about your grandchildren. And I think that's how I now feel particularly strongly about this, quite apart from my wider concerns, obviously, about these kind of forces in society which are leading to the abuses of the internet, which we're focusing on today. But like Dennis Robertson, I think also we have to challenge Facebook, for example, and other people who are in charge of social networking sites, because clearly they have a responsibility as well. And I'm sure we were all deeply moved by what Dennis Robertson said about sites which in effect are promoting eating disorders, and certainly we have to challenge Facebook and others about that. That's in fact precisely what the Zero Tolerance Charitable Trust did in relation to a particular Facebook group. On that particular Facebook site, photos of girls were being posted by ex-boyfriends with derogatory comments, and through the action and the protests of Zero Tolerance, that site was closed down. So I think that's the kind of example that we all need to follow to make sure that people in charge of these sites take full responsibility for them. But as I have indicated, educating and challenging have to be fundamental. And I commend the police in Leith, because they ran a campaign about a year ago in schools in my constituency, primary schools. It was actually based around a poster competition about cyberbullying, but obviously they went into schools, talked to children and raised the profile of the whole issue, because clearly cyberbullying in primary schools, or indeed secondary schools, is completely unacceptable. But unfortunately, with only 1 minute to go, I have to raise the issue of gender, because I think it is girls who are often most adversely affected, perhaps increasingly so as we get into the teens, but in the pre-teens as well. And for example, I think we ought to make reference to sexting, and it was NSPCC who did a study about this and found that it was often coercive, with girls most adversely affected. Sexting, of course, is sharing sexualised photos and images by mobile phone, and the NSPCC said sexting is not a gender-neutral practice. It is shaped by the gender dynamics of the peer group, in which primarily boys harass girls, and it is exacerbated by the gender norms of popular culture, family and school that fail to recognise the problem is to support girls. So we have to look at the context for cyberbullying, including sexting, and clearly that does mean that we have to address the culture that young people are growing up in. We have to look at the expectations about gender in that culture, and we have to look at what is regarded as normal and acceptable in relationships within our current culture. And tragically, that is being increasingly poisoned by the influence of pornography, and we have to address that dimension of this topic as well. And that's why I believe, as I said in a debate 2 weeks ago, that we have to increasingly use in schools materials such as the Zero Tolerance Respect Pacts, because ultimately we have to challenge the attitudes that underlie cyberbullying and the wider forms of gender stereotyping that are the underlying cause of the problem.
Thank you. Excuse me. I now call on Dr Alistair Allen to respond to the debate. 7 minutes, Minister.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I've listened with great interest today and would like to thank Alex-Johnstone for bringing this issue to the attention of the Parliament. Children especially have made the online environment the natural home. This was something brought home to me a year ago when I found my 4-year-old niece giving me the advice that I should get myself an iPad, and not only that, which type. For many children, the internet is not simply a device or a form of technology or a tool. It is an integral part of their lives, seamless with the physical world that lies outside of chat rooms, social media and blogs. And as Mr Johnson quite rightly said, the internet is another place where children go and interact with each other and with other people. The Scottish Government remains committed to ensuring that the safety and well-being of Scotland's children and young people, wherever they go, is a key priority. While it is the prerogative of children and young people to explore and enjoy the online world, it is our responsibility to ensure that they do so safely. We need to ensure that our children and young people are fully equipped with the knowledge and skills they need to use the internet safely. Now, to that end, I was encouraged to see a class of primary fives recently in Fife learning about such basic questions as whether they should allow photographs of themselves to go online and whether they should allow strangers to have their home address. And as Mr MacDonald has pointed out, none of this need take away from the enormous benefits that the internet brings. This indeed is not least true in rural areas, as Ms Grant observed. We also believe that parents should be supported and empowered to protect their children online, and believe that the current options on parental controls are an essential part of this work. Now, Mr Johnson acknowledged the difficulty of trying to police the internet, so it is not simply a matter of filters and hardware, but rather, as he himself pointed out, understanding and awareness amongst parents, children and young people about the risks of the internet. We are working with many stakeholders in Scotland to improve that level of understanding, particularly through schools. Now, Kezia Dugdale mentioned the important reality that whole websites in some cases are devoted quite openly and commercially to the persecution of individuals. She also mentioned correspondence, which she did indeed have with the Government and with myself, seeking a meeting to raise awareness around this issue. It certainly was felt at the time that Respect Me were already undertaking a campaign of awareness, but that does not take away from, of course, the importance of the matter she raises, and for that reason I'm very happy to meet with her. The Scottish Government is already planning a number of steps to raise awareness, such as supporting the UK Safer Internet Centre's Connect with Respect 2013 Safer Internet Day theme, which Respect Me is also involved in, and launching an Internet Safety Awareness competition for all Scottish schools, which will coincide with Safer Internet Day on the 5th of February this year. The Scottish Government-led stakeholder group on child internet safety will continue to monitor online safety in Scotland. In Curriculum for Excellence, health and wellbeing is now a curricular area in its own right, and learning in health and wellbeing ensures that children and young people develop the knowledge and understanding that they need for mental, emotional, social and physical well-being now and in the future. So this learning will, I hope, promote confidence, independent thinking, positive attitudes and dispositions, and help develop the ability to make ultimately positive choices. Building up their own capacity, skills and resilience, as opposed to trying to resolve their difficulties for them, will engender a sense of self-respect, which will in turn impact on their respect for others. Now, these principles apply equally across settings, whether it be in the classroom, the playground, or in children's online activities. We know that children and young people's well-being can be severely impacted by bullying, and certainly I take that very seriously. And Mr Robertson spoke very powerfully indeed of the responsibility which social networking sites have to ensure that they do not publish material which is not only actively harmful, but is encouraging others to promote harmful behaviour as well. Mr Day and others mentioned that children, as well as adults, are of course capable of cruelty, and bullying of any kind is totally unacceptable and must be dealt with quickly whenever and wherever it happens. As a government, we recognise that anti-bullying approaches are best developed locally in consultation with the community, and this is reflected in the national approach to anti-bullying for Scotland's children and young people. The national approach aims to strengthen local solutions by offering guiding principles and common visions and aims. I would very much like to echo the sentiments of the motion and that of a number of individual speakers and commend the National Anti-Bullying Service Respect Me. They support those adults working with children and young people, building capacity to prevent and tackle all types of bullying effectively through training, policy development and the provision of advice and information through their own website. I will, certainly.
Dennis Robertson.
I thank the Minister. Minister, with respect, awareness, guidance, tolerance, all the issues that you're mentioning are absolutely fine. But unless we tackle this problem at the nub, we get to the industry itself. It's not just the children, it's the industry which allows this to happen that we must tackle. What steps could we take to do that?
Minister.
I entirely concur with what the member has said about the need to tackle the industry at times. I think that although the internet may be in a very difficult place to police, not least because so many sites and servers are located outside this country, I don't think that excuses websites like the one that the member has mentioned from moral responsibility, and I don't think it absolves them from severe public and political criticism, such as has happened today in this chamber, if they promote the type of disgraceful material which he's described to us today. I think it's also important to say that the government funds Childline to provide help and online services which offer direct support to children and young people who are experiencing bullying. This support can be invaluable in helping children and young people deal with issues around bullying, and we also provide funding for Choices for Life, whose website also contains useful information. In conclusion, Presiding Officer, while cyberbullying may be a relatively new phenomenon, what may have been passed around in notes in the past or written on a wall is now being written on social media sites. We all, because of these developments, need to ensure a safe online environment for children, and for that reason I very much welcome the motion today and look forward to a time when we ensure that all children and young people are empowered to make the internet the positive force in their lives that it can be.
Thank you, Minister. That concludes Alex Johnston's members' debate on safer social networking for children, and I now close this meeting of Parliament.